Have you ever wondered what lies beyond our starlit skies? Of course you have. And likely so too did the residents of the quiet town of Pascagoula, Mississippi, on a serene October night in 1973, a night that would forever be etched into the annals of UFO history. Imagine two shipyard workers after a long day relaxing down by the Pascagoula River, and suddenly the ordinary becomes extremely strange. Throughout human history, mysterious aerial phenomena have sparked curiosity and debate, intertwining ancient mythology, folklore, and modern science. From the chariots of the gods in ancient texts to contemporary accounts of unidentified flying objects, these enigmatic experiences have persisted across cultures for centuries. While skeptics often dismiss such stories as mere fantasy or psychological anomalies, a significant number of cases elude simple explanation, compelling researchers and enthusiasts alike to explore the unknown. The 20th century marked a pivotal period in ufology, with sightings like the 1947 Roswell incident and the 1961 abduction of Betty and Barney Hill capturing the public imagination. During this era of heightened UFO awareness, the Pascagoula Encounter of 1973 emerged as one of the most extraordinary and well-documented cases. This incident, involving the alleged abduction of two men by otherworldly beings, captured national attention and remains one of the most credible accounts of alien contact due to the detailed testimonies of the witnesses, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker. The encounter stands out not only because of its vivid details, but also because of the context in which it occurred. Unlike many UFO sightings, which are often fleeting or based on distant observations, this case involved direct interaction with non-human entities and alleged physical abduction. The witnesses were ordinary working-class individuals with no prior association with UFO phenomena, making their claims all the more compelling. Furthermore, the emotional distress they exhibited, coupled with their consistent retelling of the event over decades, added a layer of authenticity that has challenged skeptics and intrigued believers. The events on October 11, 1973, unfolded in a quiet, unassuming setting. Hickson, 42, and Parker, 19, were co-workers at a local shipyard. Seeking an evening of relaxation, they decided to go fishing along the Pascagoula River. As night fell, the tranquility was shattered by the appearance of a bright blue light. Both men described their astonishment and mounting fear as an oval-shaped craft approximately 30 to 40 feet long descended silently nearby. Hickson and Parker reported that three strange beings emerged from the craft. The entities, described as being 5 foot tall and humanoid, but with peculiar features such as wrinkled gray skin, carrot-like appendages on their heads, and claw-like hands, floated toward the men. Hickson recounted a chilling experience of being paralyzed and levitated into the craft, where he was subjected to a bizarre physical examination. He later described the entities as robotic. Despite their alien appearance, with the wrinkled skin, no discernible eyes, and those carrot-like protrusions on their heads, Hickson noted their movements were precise and deliberate. Parker, on the other hand, expressed deep emotional distress, claiming he felt as though he was mentally detached during the ordeal. Visibly shaken in later interviews, he elaborated on the sensation of being observed and manipulated under harsh bright lights inside the craft. The entire encounter lasted about 20 minutes before the men were returned to their original location, unharmed but profoundly shaken. According to Hickson and Parker, the beings aboard the craft subjected them to physical examinations using a device resembling a large eye that hovered in front of them and scanned their bodies. They described being unable to resist due to a state of paralysis induced by the beings. Hickson noted it emitted a clicking or buzzing sound and that he did not feel pain, but described an intense feeling of vulnerability and terror. He also reported that the beings did not verbally or telepathically communicate with him. He felt as though they were entirely focused on the procedures. Parker, on the other hand, later claimed that he experienced telepathic communication, during which the beings conveyed that they meant no harm. He further described being examined by a smaller being that appeared more human-like compared to the others. This entity was said to conduct a procedure that involved probing his body, particularly his head. After the examination, when the men were returned to the spot where they had been taken, Hickson recalled being in a daze but able to move. Parker, however, was in a state of shock, trembling and nearly catatonic. They observed the craft departing, leaving them with a deep sense of fear and confusion. They knew their story sounded unbelievable, but they felt an overwhelming need to report what had happened. They first went to a nearby phone booth and called the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Their report was initially received with skepticism, as one might expect for such a fantastical claim. The Sheriff's Department, led by Sheriff Fred Diamond, had no experience with UFO reports of this nature, and the officers on duty were unsure how to proceed. Initially, they didn't know what to make of the situation. They noted the men's visibly distressed and fearful state and were struck by their sincerity. Hickson, the older of the two, appeared more composed, but was clearly shaken. Parker, the younger, was so distressed that he reportedly required medical attention at one point during the night. Sheriff Diamond immediately made the decision to take the men in for questioning, but rather than confronting them directly, he chose to secretly record their conversation in a holding room. He did this in hopes that, away from the pressure of questioning, Hickson and Parker might reveal inconsistencies in their story or admissions of a hoax. Instead, the recording captured genuine fear and confusion. Hickson provided the bulk of the initial report, describing the appearance of the craft, the strange beings, and the sensation of being paralyzed and taken aboard. He recounted their robotic movements, claw-like hands, and the physical examination he underwent aboard the craft. Parker, overwhelmed with emotion, struggled to speak, providing only fragmented details about his experience. They left Hickson and Parker in the holding room under the pretense of routine processing. The recording revealed a chilling and candid exchange between the two men, filled with expressions of fear and confusion.
I passed out. I passed out. That's the first time I ever passed out in my life. You should have need medical records. And I've never seen nothing like that before in my life. You can't make people believe that, though. I don't know. Sit here and believe it out, because I better wake up and start believing. Damn right. Wake up and start believing. Damn right. Exactly. I see. I can't figure out the damn door. You see how that door come in on that side of the shop? Yeah, I don't know how to open something. I don't know. I didn't see no door swing. I don't know how to open it. I don't know how to see it on. I just see something. And look around, and them damn blue lights and them some bitches are just like that, they come out. Yeah, no, you can't believe it. You can't make people believe it. I paralyzed right there. I couldn't believe it. They won't believe it one of these days. They won't believe it one of these days. Might be too late. But I knew all along they was people from out of the world up there. I knew all along.
Following the secret recording, the sheriff's office took the claims more seriously. While they remained skeptical of the extraterrestrial explanation, the officers acknowledged that Hickson and Parker truly believed they had experienced something extraordinary. The police arranged for Hickson to take a polygraph test as part of their investigation. The results indicated that Hickson believed his account, though polygraph tests were not considered definitive proof. The results were noteworthy because, despite the test being administered under typical law enforcement protocols, essentially Hickson passed it. Parker, who was still emotionally fragile, did not participate in the test at that time. These initial interactions with law enforcement played a crucial role in shaping public perception of the Pascagoula Encounter. The men's evident emotional distress and the candidness captured on the secret tape lent credibility to their story, helping it stand out among other UFO claims. At the same time, it set the stage for decades of investigation, debate, and cultural fascination surrounding one of the most extraordinary alleged UFO abduction cases in history. Despite the sheriff's office initially keeping the story under wraps, the incident leaked to local news outlets within days. This turned Hickson and Parker's private nightmare into a public spectacle, subjecting them to scrutiny, ridicule, and widespread attention. As news of the encounter broadened, it garnered both public and scientific interest. Skeptics and believers alike scrutinized their claims. Headlines sensationalized their story, often casting the incident as a bizarre or outlandish tale. For many journalists, especially those catering to skeptical audiences, the story became an opportunity for mockery rather than serious reporting. Cartoons and caricatures portraying Hickson and Parker as unhinged or foolish appeared in newspapers. Radio shows and comedians lampooned the encounter, with some joking about the carrot-headed aliens the men described. The story became a punchline, reducing the complexity of their account to a source of entertainment. For the witnesses, this public ridicule made it difficult to be taken seriously, especially by those unfamiliar with the emotional toll the event had taken on them. The local community in Pascagoula also reacted with mixed emotions. Some residents believed Hickson and Parker's story and viewed them as victims of an extraordinary, perhaps extraterrestrial event. Others, however, were openly skeptical, ridiculing the men as liars seeking attention or mentally unstable individuals. This skepticism often played out in public, with the men overhearing comments about their alleged hoax in social settings or being confronted directly by detractors. For Parker, the fear of judgment from his peers was particularly overwhelming. As a 19-year-old with little life experience, he found the ridicule unbearable. He later all but withdrew from the public eye, avoided media engagements, and even relocated to escape the stigma. For years, he refused to speak about the incident, fearing that it would only invite more mockery. In interviews decades later, Parker described experiencing symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder and stated that the encounter, combined with the ridicule, had irrevocably altered his life. Dr. J. Allen Hynek, a prominent astronomer and ufologist, played a significant role in legitimizing the investigation into the Pascagoula UFO encounter. Known for his work as a consultant on Project Blue Book, the U.S. Air Force's official study of unidentified flying objects, Hynek was a respected figure in both scientific and UFO research communities. Hynek, who had transitioned from a UFO skeptic to an advocate for serious scientific investigation of the phenomenon, was drawn to the Pascagoula case because of its potential to shed light on the abduction phenomenon, a relatively new and poorly understood area of UFO studies at the time. During interviews with the men, Hynek recognized several key elements of the Pascagoula encounter that warranted further examination. The two were ordinary working-class men with no history of making extraordinary claims or seeking public attention. They had also provided a consistent and vivid description of their experience, including the appearance of the craft, the strange beings, and the events that transpired during their alleged abduction. Finally, neither Hickson nor Parker seemed to have financial or social motives for fabricating the story, especially given the ridicule they faced. Following his investigation, Hynek publicly stated that the Pascagoula Encounter was one of the most intriguing UFO cases he had encountered. While he stopped short of declaring it definitive proof of extraterrestrial contact, he argued that the event deserved serious scientific attention. Hynek was particularly vocal about the need for the scientific community to approach such cases with an open mind, rather than dismissing them outright. His scientific approach, open-mindedness, and public advocacy helped elevate the incident from a ridiculed local story to a serious topic of discussion in ufology.
Hynek is called to the scene of every major UFO sighting. He was summoned to Pascagoula, Mississippi last October, hours after two shipyard workers, Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, stumbled into a sheriff's office and said they had been taken aboard a flying saucer.
I went down to Pascagoula completely negative, but I worked with those men for quite a while. I listened to tapes that had been taken when they didn't know they were being taped. I saw how Charlie behaved under hypnosis, and finally the lie detector test. All of those things convinced me that he was not making it up. They had had an experience, period.
But you can't determine whether they actually saw a flying saucer or were taken aboard one.
No, I couldn't at all. There's no way that I know of in which we could determine that. It's like if you tell me that you dreamt of purple peach trees last night. What can I do about it?
Despite this, the scientific community remained divided. Critics argued that the lack of physical evidence undermined the validity of the encounter. Dr. Robert Schaefer, a leading skeptic, argued that the story was influenced by the cultural zeitgeist of the 1970s, which saw a surge in UFO-related media and public interest. He dismissed the encounter as a product of imagination and accused Hickson of capitalizing on the public's fascination with UFOs. Other prominent skeptics dismissed the encounter as either a hoax or a case of shared delusion. Some speculated that Hickson, the older and more outspoken of the two, had fabricated the story and pressured Parker into corroborating it. The initial police interviews turned out to be a pivotal moment in the Pascagoula UFO encounter. They not only served as a record of the witnesses' emotions and reactions, but also offered a glimpse into the authenticity of their experiences. The secret tape recording, along with the polygraph test results, provided strong evidence that Hickson and Parker were not simply fabricating their story. For many UFO researchers and enthusiasts, this initial interaction with law enforcement marked the beginning of a larger investigation into the encounter, one that would continue to captivate and puzzle those who sought to understand what really happened that night along the Pascagoula River. The incident also left a lasting impact on both Hickson and Parker. While Hickson embraced public attention, writing a book titled UFO Contact at Pascagoula and attending UFO conventions, Parker avoided the spotlight for decades. In his 2018 book, Pascagoula, The Closest Encounter, My Story, Parker revealed the extent of his emotional trauma. including the symptoms akin to PTSD. His reluctance to engage with the media further reinforced the perception that he had little to gain from perpetuating a hoax. While the encounter primarily focuses on the accounts of Hickson and Parker, other witnesses later came forward, claiming to have seen unusual phenomena on or around October 11, 1973, adding an intriguing layer of corroboration to the case. Maria Blair, a local resident, came forward in the years following the incident with her account of seeing an unusual light in the sky that night. She and her husband had been driving near the river when they spotted a bright object hovering in the distance. Initially, they thought it might be an airplane or a helicopter, but the object's erratic movements and sudden disappearance left them baffled. Her account gained attention because she had no prior connection to Hickson or Parker, and her sighting independently corroborated their timeline of events. Several Gautier, Mississippi locals reported seeing bright lights moving erratically across the night sky that night, with some claiming the lights were unlike any conventional aircraft. Nonetheless, the case resisted simple explanations, as the witnesses maintained their accounts until their death. Charles Hickson passed away on September 9, 2011, at the age of 80, and Calvin Parker died on July 9, 2023, at the age of 67. So whether you believe in extraterrestrial visitors or not, the 1973 Pascagoula incident remains one of the most compelling and controversial in UFO history. And as we ponder the possibilities of life beyond our planet, keep an open mind and a curious spirit, because the universe is vast and the truth is out there.